So, welcome everybody. I am really happy to see you here. Today we're talking about how to communicate your value without feeling arrogant. So let's see whether or not we are going. It looks like it's working there over on Facebook and also on LinkedIn. So if you see my eyes going backwards and forwards all over the place, apologies for that. I am trying to stay on top of the chat, which last time didn't come through terribly well. My name's Charlotte. We're going to be talking today about how to communicate your value without feeling arrogant. So let me get my screen going here so that we can all see what's going on. Fantastic. So, what are we going to talk about today? Today we are going to be talking about why it's not enough to just do a good job. It actually is essential that we learn to communicate our value upwards to our bosses, outwards to our colleagues, downwards to our teams. Even though we are genuinely already doing a good job and having a huge impact, that in and of itself isn't going to get us the recognition and the feeling of value that we want. So first we're going to talk about why it's not enough to just do a really good job and hope that that speaks for you. Secondly, we're going to address why it is that speaking up about what we do and what we're good at, talking about our achievements and our accomplishments, feels so bad to most of us. There are most of us really genuinely believe and feel that telling other people what we have done, the results that we have achieved, and owning that responsibility is arrogant and boastful and just not the done thing. So we're going to talk about why that is and then what we can do to change that. And then finally, I am going to offer you a whole series of steps that you can take to start changing that for yourself and get better at communicating the value that you provide without feeling arrogant, without feeling sleazy. And I'm also going to offer you one simple change that you can start right away as you practice the other things, which will immediately shift the way you feel and the way others perceive you in the workplace. So I would love to know from anyone who is joining us today, on a scale of 1 to 10, you can pop it in the chat, on the scale of 1 to 10, where 1 is, my God, this is my worst nightmare, I would never do it, and 10 is, I talk about my value pretty much all the time. Where do you fall at the moment on talking about the value that you provide in the workplace? Is that something that you do? Is that something that you are comfortable doing? So I would love to know that if you could let me know in the chat. So let me re-find my... Is in here? Okay, great. But before we dive into all of the things that we're going to do, why doing a good job is not enough, why it feels terrible and arrogant and gross to speak about our accomplishments, and the one little thing that you can change immediately, let's first address why this even matters. So a recent study by McKinsey from 2021 was looking at barriers that people face in the workplace. And this particularly was looking at the different barriers based on people's ethnicity in the United States. But the first thing I'd like to draw your attention to is that when they asked employees of all ethnicities whether or not they believed that they were rewarded in line with the value they provided to the business, the highest scoring group was white employees at 51%, and black employees was 38%. So less than half of employees in the workplace in 2021 believed that the reward, the recognition, the promotions that you receive in the workplace is in line with the contribution that you make to the business. So if you are thinking, well, I just do a good job and then I will be promoted and that will be fine, that's probably not true. Even if your value was being seen, even if all of the results that you were providing were being seen, it wouldn't necessarily translate into compensation and reward for you. And now looking specifically in on women, this is a recent report from Albright on the future of work for women. And this is old data in terms of it is known that women take on more extra projects, volunteer projects, uncompensated extra labour in the workplace. It was first looked at in academia back in the 90s, I think. But In 2023, 83% of women take on uncompensated extra labour in the workforce, and 1 in 3 does this every year. So if you are not talking about the value, you are not getting compensated for that extra labour that you are doing. And tying it back into this idea of, are you rewarded in line with the value that you provide? 56% of women think they need to overperform for at least a year before they'll get promoted. And 48% of Black workers in America, looking at that McKinsey report, felt that they were less valued for the reward that they for the value that they provided based on their race. So that's another reason why you really do need to get into the habit of telling people, communicating the value that you are providing, because it's tied in to whether people perceive you as valuable, whether you are recognized, whether you are going to get that extra compensation. So let's dive into the first one of those points, which is why your work is not going to speak for itself. And the way I'd like to do this is I would like to offer you an exercise, not necessarily to do right now, but one that I'd really strongly recommend that you do at some point. You take a piece of paper, you divide it into 3 columns like this, and then little columns underneath. I can even send you this if you'd like. Pop me a message on whatever platform you are currently watching, and I will be more than happy to send you this very simple template that I have created. You're going to take 3 columns and you're going to think about the results that you have created, the work that you have done in the last quarter, in the last 6 months. And in the first column, you're going to write down the work that you have done by yourself. So not as part of a team, just work that you have done alone. And write out those results that you have created for the business, for your employer, for the, whether your employer is you or whether it's somebody else, those results that you have created, write them down and then give it a value. How much income has that created if it's a monetary value? How much time has it saved for somebody else? How much goodwill do you think it's created for your customers? How helpful was it? How has it changed the culture of the office? Try to give that a value so that you can really see, okay, this is the result that I've created, but this is also the impact that it is having. In the second column, you're going to do exactly the same thing for work that you have contributed to. So this is work where you were part of a team and you had a part to play in delivering some larger project. And you're going to get really specific about what is the result that you created as part of that team. So not the whole team's results, but your individual contribution to that work. And then the same. If you've got a project management plan, you'll probably find that actually there's value already created in that project plan. You can take a look. If there isn't, again, estimate. These are not numbers that have to be precise. They are orders of magnitude which help you to see how much you're doing. And then the third column, you're going to do work that you have led on, where you were in charge of the team. You were the person who drove the project. Maybe you came up with it, maybe you didn't, maybe you were just assigned as the project manager or the leader of that task force or employee representation group. Whatever it is, these are the results that you led. And it's really, really important as part of this process that you make a distinction between work that you did by yourself, work that you contributed to, and work that you have led. This exercise, the first time you do it, is going to take a little bit longer. It may take sort of 20 minutes, half an hour to really think through everything that you have done and the value that you have provided. But as you get used to doing this more frequently, it's going to be more top of mind. You're going to be able to see it quickly. When you've finished, you can look at this and you can see. Firstly, you'll be able to have a really clear visual representation of all of the things that you have created, the results that you have created for the business. You will have a guesstimated idea of the monetary bottom line value that might have created for the business. But what you're also going to see is how much of that work would be invisible to anyone who was not your direct boss, if even your direct boss was able to see that. And that's why just doing a good job, just providing value, isn't enough. I mean, would you be able to do this for somebody else in your organization? Think of a colleague, not someone who reports directly to you. You might be able to do this for someone who reports directly to you. But if you think of someone who doesn't, would you be able to list all of the value and the results that they have created for the business in the last quarter? What they've done by themselves, what they contributed to, work that they've led. Let me know in the chat if you think that you would be able to do that. I personally know that I would not have been able to do that when I worked in teams. There's stuff that's visible, there's stuff that I would have been able to put on there, but I would have missed enormous, enormous amounts of work that somebody else was doing. And so if you don't tell them what you are doing, they can't possibly know all of the value that you are providing. Just going to let that sink in for a moment. Just doing it is not enough. It is not possible for the best bosses in the world, for everybody with the best intention in the world. It is not possible for them to see and have time to notice everything that you do. They're not deliberately trying to minimize you. They're also busy with their own things. And actually, you might have even found as you did this that stuff came up that you had forgotten that you had done. So if it's not top of mind for you, how can you expect your boss's boss, the CEO, to know all of the value that you are creating within this organization? You have to help them. So hopefully now you see why it's important for you to tell people, to communicate your value. Partially, the value that you create is not necessarily what you are compensated for. You are compensated for the value that people perceive and understand. There's a lot of work that is not directly compensated that you are probably doing. And you need to get that out there. You need people to know what you are doing if you want to be recognized for everything that you are doing. You can't expect them to read your mind. You can't expect them to look up from their own busy schedules and notice every single thing. So it's really important that you spend some time thinking about telling people about it. Having therefore agreed that we are happy that we need to tell people about the work that we do, that it is actually genuinely important to spend the time communicating beyond just doing a good job, let's dive into the reason that we don't, because it's real. Even if we know that we should, it's really hard to do. And there are lots of good reasons for that. So, why does it feel so sleazy to tell people about the value that we create? I don't know whether you have ever known anyone like this, but when I was working as a humanitarian aid worker, I had a colleague who was phenomenal at communicating her own value. And opportunities just fell out of the woodwork for her. She got jobs moved from organization to another organization with barely the need for an interview because she was so good at telling people what she did. Everyone knew her story. Everyone knew the journey that she had been on, where she had lived, the time in the army, the time in Brazil, all of that. Every time I came back to town from my outpost, I would see her, having lunch with some new high up person from the UN because she was so good at this. And I was really, really jealous. So I've done some thinking about why is it that she felt comfortable doing it and I did not? And partially this is just genuinely about culture. Did you grow up in a culture where it is normal to talk about your own achievements, where it is accepted to do that? Now, if you grew up in the UK, I'm going to say no, you did not. More so in America, certainly the ancient Romans, for example, were very much in favor of talking about their own benefits. If you read some letters from Pliny, if you ever had to go through that delight while you were at school, then you will remember that, really happy to talk about how great they were. British people, not so much. So it is part of a societal norm that we don't do this. You may have, as I did, you may have grown up with statements like, pride comes before the fall, or, don't toot your own horn, don't be boastful. Your work should speak for itself. You shouldn't have to tell people if it were really that good, people would notice. And yeah, not helpful, because also not actually true. And the second element around this culture is also elements of socialization, and that will have to do with the identities that you live in. Certainly, if you identify as a woman, women are often socialized to not put themselves forward, to be seen as, to think that good girls are quiet and they don't put themselves forward and they help people in the background, and other people should be allowed to take the credit. So if you have marginalized identities of any different kind, you are going to have been socialized with certain messages about what it is and is not appropriate to talk about. And the reason that that's important is because when we are part of a group, and humans are group animals, we need to be accepted by the norms around us. And so stepping outside of those boundaries does not feel safe. It feels as though we might be ostracized. Somebody might tell us we are wrong. Somebody might tell us that we are boastful. Someone might tell us that we are arrogant. And that's not going to feel good. So we don't want to do it. And then finally, the thing that makes it feel sleazy and makes us jump into the idea of being arrogant is the insecurity that we feel around whether or not we can claim those results as our own, whether we really did contribute that much, whether it's okay for us to say that we did something that we did. Now, luckily, we've done this exercise beforehand, looking at what we have actually created. So that insecurity is going to come up there. And hopefully we've also now got some lovely data, which means that we can deal with the insecurity separately. We're still going to have the culture and the socialization elements that make this feel difficult. And we're going to we're going to cope with, deal with, move around that culture and that socialization and that insecurity that we have in a couple of ways. So the first thing is we're going to look at the definition of arrogant. So we are going to do this in a really cognitive, top-down kind of a way. And there are two things that matter about arrogance, right? So, dictionary definition is having or revealing an exaggerated sense of one's own importance or abilities. Now, because you've done the exercise, or you will have done the exercise before you're going to start talking about the value that you create in the workplace, so that you can be recognized for that, and so that your colleagues can see that, so that your bosses can see that, and they can reward you in line with the value that you are creating. You're going to have it, so you know you're not exaggerating. You've got the data. So when your brain says to you, "Ooh, telling people about this is arrogant," you can use the cognitive trick of reframing and say, no, this is not exaggerated. This is true. And then the second piece for arrogance, which has really changed things for me, was to think about it in terms of what makes something arrogant rather than confident. Is that there's an element of comparison, sort of superiority, and putting down of other people. So if you're exaggerating the value that you've actually created, that's going to feel sleazy. But also, if you are putting yourself in a position of superiority and saying that what matters is, you being better than other people, that is then going to run the risk of coming across as arrogant. So on a cognitive level, that's how we're going to look at being able to promote ourselves, talk about the value that we create without feeling arrogant. We're going to remind ourselves, what does arrogant really mean? And if it is true, and I have the evidence, then it's confident, not arrogant. Armed with that, here's a couple of things that you can do, building up gradually so that you become more at ease with communicating your value to others without feeling sleazy. And the first thing that I really want to recommend is stop dismissing your work when others do recognize it. Now, this is particularly common for women, but men do it as well. Of course, all people do, which is, maybe you're in a team meeting and somebody says, You know, Sarah did an amazing job leading this project where we delivered, 4 new schools built within the timeline that they should have been, on budget. Everyone's happy. And what does Sarah say? Oh, I had help. Or it wasn't just me. The team were great. And you might say, well, that's true. She did not build those schools single-handedly. And no, she didn't. But before bringing in the team, acknowledge that feedback, acknowledge that recognition, practice just saying thank you. I am proud of that. If you're ready for the next step, you can always just say thank you. And then after a pause, you can say, and I would also like to say, the team were amazing, and these are the people I'd like to call out in the team for what they've done. So stop dismissing. And then it's about finding time to practice. So if you are leading a team, you can do this with the people who report to you, but you can also suggest this in the one-to-ones with your boss. So use your weekly one-to-ones to talk about your achievements, the results that you have delivered during the period since you last spoke. You can use a running tally if that's the way that you like to do it, or you can just think about it and bring your top 3 and make sure you get in the habit of mentioning them. How's your week been? It's been great. I did this, and I did this. It might feel uncomfortable to begin with, but as you practice, as you get more used to this, going back to your list, not exaggerating, not comparing yourself to other people, it's going to start to feel more natural. It's going to start to be more top of mind for your boss. I remember working at McKinsey, and I was doing a project, and there was this guy on the project who, every chance he got, he would tell people that he was a great communicator. Literally can't remember anything else about him, except 6 years later, I can still remember that he was a great communicator because he kept telling me that he was. So just get used to telling people, I'm good at this. This is the achievement that I have. It's not arrogant when it's true. And then you can also start encouraging others, start trying to shift the culture in the teams, in the organizations that you're in, to have people talk about their results and what they are proud of. In a lot of companies now, what you can see is you will have kudos, or where people call out other people's achievements. And it's much, much easier to talk about somebody else doing well than it is to talk about you. So I would encourage you to think about flipping that, making time for people to talk about their own achievements. And if you're starting to feel uncomfortable, imagine how you would say it about somebody else. How would you feel comfortable saying about your colleague's achievement? And can you take some of that language and use it for yourself? And as you get used to this, and as you encourage other people to do, what you will find is that you shift some of the social norms within the groups that you are in, and it will feel safer. This is now the normal thing. This is what we do. We share what we have achieved, and we praise other people for what they have achieved that they tell us about. And the final thing is, even as you're going through and you're collecting your evidence and you are cognitively engaging with the knowledge that you need to tell people about it because they can't know if you don't, and you are not comparing yourself to others and you are not exaggerating, still expect it to feel hard to begin with. Expect it to still feel a bit, did I go too far? Was that too much? You can always ask for feedback if other people felt like you came across in a specific way, or you can just trust your own instinct and ease yourself forwards and practice. But I promised you, before we round up today, I promised you one simple trick that you can do. I've already given you one, which is to stop dismissing your work when others do recognize it, but I'm going to give you another. And this one is genuinely my absolute favorite. Say I, not we, when you are talking about the work that you do. In interviews, this one comes up a lot. you know, well, we did this, we did that, the team. Using your evidence, start your sentence with I. I did this. Other team members did this. Or I coordinated 3 team members to achieve this. So you're not saying I achieved this and leaving out the team members. So you're not exaggerating, but you are claiming responsibility for the piece of it that is yours. So I'd love to know, where are you now? Scale of 1 to 10. At the beginning, how did you feel? 1, never. 10, all the time, in which case, not sure why you would be here. Having thought about those things that we've talked about today, how do you feel about it now? Pop a number in the chat, 1 to 10, write it down in your own book. See how have you shifted? And then finally, I'm just going to remind you of how this is going to work. So if you want to communicate your value without arrogance, there are basically 4 steps. Firstly, start with the data. Get clear on what you have done, your role in it, by yourself, contributing to a team, leading a team, and have the evidence to back it up, so that you can always argue with yourself or anyone else if they say you're exaggerating. Number 2, remind yourself that people genuinely don't see a lot of what you do. With the best will in the world, they cannot possibly be aware of all of those things that are on your list. So if you don't tell them, they can't know. Number 3, without arrogance comes by avoiding exaggeration and avoiding comparison. Don't say that you're better than other people. Don't say that you did more than you did. Keep it factual. Keep it accurate. It's not arrogance if it's true. And number 4, accept responsibility for what you have done. Say I, not we, and don't dismiss it when someone else says you did a great job, publicly or privately. Don't dismiss it. Just say thank you. If you have any questions at all about this, please just send me a message, whatever platform you are watching this on right now, whether that is Facebook or LinkedIn. I love receiving messages, super open to that. Pop me a message, tell me what you thought. If you have any questions, let me know. And if you are looking for help being valued in the workplace, communicating that value, getting the recognition that you know you deserve, pop me a message. My 90-day one-to-one program can help you. My clients get promoted. They feel better. They feel stronger. They lead their teams from a place of confidence after working together with me. And I would love to be able to help you have that too. Thank you very much. I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your evening, and hopefully I will connect with some of you soon in the DMs. Good night.